Hello and welcome to World Stories. I'm Sumi Somaskanda with your International Reporters magazine. This week we're going to take you on a journey from South Africa to Moldova and all the way to Mexico. Buckle up, we hope you'll enjoy. We start our show with a story about courage in the face of extreme adversity. Being homosexual in Africa is a tough feat. Gays and lesbians there experience discrimination not only from their families and communities, but also from their governments. Homosexuality is illegal in dozens of African countries and can even be punishable by death in nations like Mauritania and parts of Nigeria. South Africa, on the other hand, was among the first countries in the world to legalize same-sex marriage and outlaws discrimination based on sexual orientation. But in reality, there's a big gap between the law and public opinion. Gays and lesbians still face abuse and even brutal violence every day. In our next story, UNTV's Jill Fickling shows us how one courageous victim of gay violence is standing up for her rights.
It's like you crying out for help, but nobody comes to your rescue. Nobody's able to hear your cries.
When Oyama Mbopa was viciously attacked, her cries also went unanswered. Cape Town is South Africa's main tourist destination. But in the nearby township where Oyama lives, the levels of violence are staggering. Interpol estimates that 1 in every 2 women will be raped in her lifetime. And gay women like Oyama are even more vulnerable.
It's not easy being a lesbian in the township. We are always targeted. And men are always trying to show us that at the end of the day we're women.
Oyama was dragged to a passage between some shacks and brutally raped. She was a schoolgirl, already openly gay, and just 15 years old. There's no doubt in her mind exactly why she was attacked.
Because of my sexuality, so that we can all be cured, so that we can start dating men, and we can all just be straight. It's what they call curative rape.
Curative, or corrective rape, as it's often called, is now an everyday fear for most gay women in South Africa. Gay activist groups estimate that 10 lesbians are raped per week in Cape Town alone. And since 1998, more than 30 of these hate crimes have led to the victim's death. Discriminatory attitudes against homosexuals are deeply entrenched here, sometimes even within their own families. Oyama told her mother she was a lesbian when she was 13 years old.
There was this thing new to me. It was a shock. I said, this is witchcraft, my child. I used to beat her. I used to beat her a lot.
It took Oyama's mother 8 long years to finally accept her daughter's sexuality.
It changed my whole life to just hear her telling me how much she loves me and she has accepted my sexuality.
Yes, I did accept my child as she is, and I love her. I love her.
But to protect the rights of all gay people here, the South African laws to protect homosexual rights must be implemented, says Edwin Cameron, Justice of the South African Constitutional Court.
We've got to change attitudes on the part of the public, police officials, people like myself, judges and lawyers, magistrates. There's a lot of work to be done in making it easier for lesbians to report rape.
And Nomsibo Mancini, chief of the South Africa UN Women Office, agrees.
The South African government, I think, has done well in terms of the legislation. They need also to ensure that when gays and lesbians experience rape and murder, they can follow up as quickly as possible before the evidence disappears.
Although Oyama saw her attacker caught and sentenced to 5 years, the memories of her attack can't be erased. But she is determined to remain true to who she is, until such a time that she and all the other women like her are accepted and they can walk free from fear.
Just because I was a victim of rape, I'm not going to dwell on that. I'm going to study. I'm going to be someone. And I want him to see me tomorrow as a successful woman.
An inspiring story. Now we meet a man who faced hardship as a child, but he decided to make light of his experiences and take advantage of a special skill, his ability to make people laugh. Mohammed Amer first tried his hand at stand-up comedy as a teenager in Houston, Texas, where his family landed after fleeing Kuwait. He was an instant hit, and he's been performing ever since. He's the first and only Arab-American refugee comic to perform for U.S. troops overseas, and he entertains packed audiences from Las Vegas to Sydney. Palestinian Broadcasting Corporation reporter Haroun Amira sat down with Mohammed for a closer look.
After successful shows in Bethlehem, Nablus, and Jerusalem, Mohammed Amer has come to Ramallah to perform his stand-up comedy routine. The Palestinian-American, who calls himself Mo Amer for short, sees the tour as a great opportunity as well as a homecoming.
My heart and my thoughts will always remain tied to my homeland. This is the 30th country in which I've performed my stand-up routine. As a comedian from the U.S., I'm also really happy to help make stand-up comedy better known here.
The show lasts for an hour, and Mo gets plenty of laughs. Some people in the audience are familiar with stand-up comedy from overseas or from the internet. Others are experiencing it for the first time. Mohammed lived in Kuwait before he immigrated to the U.S., where he later became a citizen. 2 decades after he left home, he says he can still identify with the experiences of millions of Palestinians. He uses satire to make his audience chuckle about their everyday lives.
As an artist, you can empathize with the lives of ordinary people. People do the same things day after day, and we talk about it. We perceive things that they don't notice. The audience laughs because I address those things in my stand-up comedy routine. If you do it in a way that feels authentic, they recognize themselves.
Mo's routine addresses everyday topics, including relationships between parents and children, behavioral differences between Arabs and Americans, family get-togethers and partings, and even Arab football commentators. The familiarity of the topics creates intimacy between him and the audience, without offending anyone.
Everybody's the best people. أجدع ناس يا حلاوة من وين أنت من فرنسا أجدع ناس من وين أنت من ألمانيا أجدع ناس.
Mohammed Amer is making Palestinians laugh, and he'd like to see that happen more often. He's called on Palestinian artists living abroad to return to their homeland and use their skills to entertain people here, to bring a bit more joy into their lives. Haroun Amira, Ramallah.
Now we go to Moldova. Last spring, the government there passed something called the Law on Social Inclusion of Disabled People. Legislation ensuring that Moldovans with disabilities have equal rights and that they can participate in society and the economy without discrimination. The law provides support for individuals and institutions that do just that, like in our next story. Moldova's TRM reporter Irina Krasion introduces us to initiatives that help blind and visually impaired people find a job.
Natalia is 34 years old. She's blind. Her son, who is only 6 years old, accompanies her on her way to work.
My mother's very beautiful. She's a good and a hard-working person. I love her very, very much. She takes my hand, and together we go to my kindergarten. After that, I kiss my mother, and she goes to work.
For 14 years, Natalia was not able to find a job. 2 months ago, she managed to find work as a laundress at another kindergarten in Chisinau, the capital of the Republic of Moldova. Here, she washes and irons the children's clothes, bed linen, and towels.
I make sure the kids have clean beds. It's important they're comfortable. We change the linen every day. I wash and iron it and put it next to the pillowcases.
If she notices that the clothes or the towels are tattered, she mends them right away.
I bought a tool especially for this job that helps me thread a needle. Children are children. Things wear out. So then I have to repair them.
At first, her colleagues were skeptical. They doubted whether she could do the job. Now they're amazed by the quality of her work.
Sighted people might do this job with less dedication because they'd be in a hurry. Natalia pays close attention to make sure everything's well ironed. She washes and irons almost 30 units a day.
Natalia was born with perfect eyesight. But when she was a student at the Ecology and Environmental Sciences faculty at the Institute of Real Sciences in Chisinau, she had an accident. Natalia loved chemistry, so much so that one day she got a bottle of acid, took it home, and hid it in her room. When she retrieved the bottle to go to her neighbor's place to do some experiments, it exploded in her face. Now she can only distinguish light from dark.
I opened the bottle, and then the acid reacted with the air, and it exploded in my face. Doctors say my eyes suffered 3rd or 4th degree burns.
She was 20 years old when she lost her eyesight. Alexei Nikolai has a severe visual disability, but thanks to his glasses, he can do a lot of useful things. Recently, he was hired to restore furniture.
The furniture arrives in bad condition, so I restore it. I've been trained in this field, and that's important. But I need a strong light, and I have to get very close to the objects.
Alexei works in a charity shop that opened recently. It was an initiative of the Business Support Center for Blind People. When a project supported by international donors came to an end, the participants decided to launch their own store to continue their mission of supporting blind people. The store offers employment opportunities for the visually impaired. The proceeds from sales also help support them in their search for work. This shop sells second-hand goods from Holland.
The profits are invested in our main goal, namely to integrate blind and visually impaired people into everyday life. We also try to motivate employers to hire these people. We help them by offering the same salary as regular employers. We adapt their workplaces to their needs. We offer this service as long as there's no public funding for job accessibility for persons with disabilities.
In Moldova, some 10,000 people are registered as having visual disabilities. Almost 1,000 are blind, and others have serious visual impairments. Only 500 of them have a job. Last summer, a new law aimed at increasing the social integration of disabled people came into effect. Now companies that have more than 20 employees must have a minimum of 5% of people with disabilities on their staff. Employers who don't obey the ruling will be fined.
The word sightseeing usually conjures up images of visiting ancient ruins, palaces, and wonders of nature on vacation. But going to the library? Hardly a holiday activity for the most of us. But you might change your mind if you saw the library we're about to show you. The Biblioteca Palafoxiana in Puebla, Mexico, is certainly a sight to see. The 17th century building houses tens of thousands of fascinating books and texts that date back centuries. Puebla TV's Nancy Castro tells us the story behind Mexico's famous library.
The historical center of Puebla has been a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1987. The Palafoxiana Library stands in its midst. Founded in 1646, it was named after its creator, Bishop Juan de Palafox y Mendoza. The bishop wanted to gather the city's entire collection of religious manuscripts under one roof, so he donated 4,000 of his own books to the library on condition that they be made available to the public, including indigenous people, and not just to clergy. It was the beginning of what's now regarded as the first public library in the Americas.
The Palafoxiana contains an estimated 42,000 volumes. That includes religious manuscripts and doctrines, as well as literary works that date from 1473 to 1910. The majority of them are written in Chaldaic and Hebrew, ancient Greek and Latin.
In 1773, more than a century after the bishop's initiative, another clergyman, Francisco de Fabián y Fuero, ordered the construction of an impressive building for the library that many consider a work of art. It's still the home of Palafoxiana's unique collection.
As far as its architecture is concerned, the Palafoxiana is similar to the University Library in Salamanca in Spain. Not identical, but similar. In those days, Salamanca was regarded as one of the most prestigious universities in the kingdom, along with the University of Alcalá de Henares, now known as Complutense University.
Close to the entrance is an unusual-looking lectern made in the form of a wooden wheel. It allows the reader to consult several books at once. The bookshelves are made from the wood of the Mexican white pine, a tree native to Puebla. The reading room still features many of its original 18th century fittings. Originally, there were bookshelves on 2 floors, but the library continued to receive donations. It also inherited the books of the Jesuits after they were expelled from Mexico. Its collection grew so much that a 3rd level had to be added. The library has 9 incunabula, works printed rather than handwritten, before the 16th century. The oldest are 15th century editions of Herodot's The Histories and St. Augustine's The City of God. It also has 12 works by Bishop Juan de Palafox y Mendoza, including The Virtues of the Indians, which was printed in Puebla and disseminated throughout Europe.
There were other libraries in Mexico, but they were destroyed during the Revolution and military insurrections, leaving only the Palafoxiana unscathed. Supporters of Carranza came here, and so did the Zapatistas. The library was taken over by the government. And that's how the library was protected. It had the bishop's blessing.
In 1999, Puebla was hit by a massive earthquake. It caused extensive damage to the Palafoxiana Library. Because of the building's cultural significance, the state of Puebla immediately began restoration. Then a campaign started to have the library recognized as a UNESCO World Cultural Heritage Site. In 2005, it was added to UNESCO's Memory of the World list. The Palafoxiana has also played a role in preserving the cultural and historical heritage of other countries, including Romania.
Aquí se encontró
Here in the Palafoxiana, you can find copies of almost all of the archives that were burned in Romania during the Second World War. Duplicates were brought here to the Palafoxiana. So information on the history of Romania that had been almost completely destroyed could be reconstructed.
The library also houses works that were banned during the Inquisition. It's befitting of the spirit of Bishop Palafoxi Mendoza, whose feelings on the subject are engraved for posterity above the library's entrance. He who succeeds without books is in an inconsolable darkness, on a mountain without company, on a path without a crozier, in darkness without a guide.
And finally, to a sport that's long been popular in Russia, dog sled racing. Around the country, dog sled enthusiasts put their endurance and their ability to withstand cold to the test as they harness teams of strong huskies and navigate slippery snow-packed routes. It's so popular in Russia that even kids are getting involved. RT Svetlana Kurakina has more.
A husky safari through a winter wonderland, only an hour's drive from Moscow. Every weekend, scores of husky fans gather outside the Russian capital to train their dogs. Olga owns 3.
If you get yourself a husky, prepare for your life to change overnight. They're very sweet and they love human company, but they're also very active, so you'll simply have to love the sport and spend hours outside with them.
Sled dog racing has traditionally been popular in Russia's north. Yet, during Soviet times, sled dog breeding dropped and the sport nearly disappeared. Its revival began in the 1980s, with sled dog racing now once again going strong, not only in the far-flung northern regions, but in the capital too. So much so that Moscow's Kuzminki Park has even played host to a junior sled dog race, something the city's never seen before. More than 80 competitors from all over Russia, aged from 5 to 17, descended on Moscow to take part. These 2 sisters, both called Sasha, are both in love with the sport.
It's a great way of bonding with your dog. I love dogs and I begged my mom to get me a puppy. So when she got me a race dog, I jumped up at the chance to start racing.
The youngsters showed their skills in several disciplines. Cross-country skiing with a dog called ski joring, imported from Scandinavia, and sled racing. Things didn't always go as planned, but no one gave up.
Huskies are becoming more and more popular in Russia, but so far we've only had competitions for adults. Yet the sport's become so big in this country that we felt the need to organize a race for juniors too. They have 2 kilometers to cover with several complicated turns.
It all seems like plenty of fresh air and adrenaline, but it's also a lot of hard work. These animals are highly trained athletes and dedicated competitors.
It takes from 2 to 3 years of regular practice to train a good team of dogs. Obedience, resilience and the will to race are all important. The dogs have to listen to your voice and obey your orders.
And drivers have their secrets of how to put a top team together. Sofia got hooked on the sport almost 2 years ago. She says her husky Blondie has running in her blood.
Every dog has its own personality. Some love running more than others. Some dogs dislike each other and don't want to work together. The key is to have a determined and intelligent team leader like this one here. Like every high-speed sport, sled dog racing can be risky, but if you train wisely and love animals, it's just great.
Hard work, yes, but just how much fun is it? Looking at Sofia and Blondie, a lot. Svetlana Kurakina, Primetime Russia, RT.
And with that, we've come to the end of this edition of World Stories. From all of us here and our partner stations around the world, thanks for watching. Don't forget to watch this show again. Head to our website at dw.de/worldstories. We'll leave you with this week's Picks of the World. See you next week.